Good morning, students. Today we'll start with our new chapter, that is respiration in plants. And we all know that respiration occurs at cellular level, that is, it occurs in cells. That's why I've written cellular respiration. Okay, so now what is this cellular respiration? Okay, before understanding cellular respiration, let us understand what is respiration. Respiration is what? It is breaking down of glucose molecule to produce energy in presence of oxygen. In presence of oxygen, glucose molecules break down to produce energy. If there is presence of glucose, there will be more energy produced, but if there is presence of oxygen, the more energy will be produced. But if there is absence of oxygen, very less energy will be produced. So, in this chapter, we will be seeing about both the types of reactions, or both the types of processes. So, respiration is basically divided into two types, aerobic and anaerobic. Aerobic means aerobic respiration which occurs in presence of oxygen. What is anaerobic respiration? It means which occurs in absence of oxygen. Now, first we'll be seeing about anaerobic respiration, that is respiration which occurs in absence of oxygen. So, first of all, as I told, that breakdown of glucose to release energy. Glucose is a 6-carbon compound, and glucose undergoes glycolysis to form 2 molecules of pyruvic acid. This is a 3-carbon compound. Our pyruvic acid is a 3-carbon compound, and that's why we are adding here 2 molecules of pyruvic acid. 2 molecules of pyruvic acid means ultimately 6 molecules. 6 carbon will be present here also. So, how this glucose is converted into pyruvic acid? By a process known as glycolysis, and this glycolysis process occurs in cytoplasma, and this is an anaerobic process. Means there is no requirement of oxygen here. So, through glycolysis, glucose has converted to pyruvic acid. This pyruvic acid will undergo 2 types of process. One in muscle cells, another in yeast. First, let's talk about yeast. This pyruvic acid gets converted to ethanol with the release of carbon dioxide. See, if we'll take 1 molecule of pyruvic acid, say, so it is a 3-carbon compound, it will form 1 carbon dioxide. We have all written 2 here because this is 2. Otherwise, consider that we have taken 1 molecule of pyruvic acid, which is a 3-carbon compound. So, it will form ethanol, which is a 2-carbon compound, along with the release of carbon dioxide, which is a 1-carbon compound. So 2 plus 1, 3. So this is what, when pyruvic acid breaks down in the yeast cell. Okay, in the yeast cell, or in presence of yeast, pyruvic acid converts into ethanol with the release of carbon dioxide, and this process is known as fermentation. This process, basically conversion of pyruvic acid into ethanol with the release of carbon dioxide, this takes place in breweries. Breweries is what? Wine factories. In wine factories, this process is being done, that is glucose, grapes. If we talk about converting grapes into wine, then grapes contain a lot of glucose in it, and glucose with the help of glycolysis process will convert into pyruvic acid, and then pyruvic acid in the presence of yeast will convert into ethanol with the release of carbon dioxide, and this process is known as fermentation. And along with these two things, that is ethanol and carbon dioxide, two molecules of ATP are also formed. If aerobic respiration would have taken place, then 36 ATP would have been formed. But since this is anaerobic respiration, that's why just 2 ATPs are formed. This is what occurs in during formation of wine or during making of wine. As well as this process, this fermentation is also done in bakeries for making bread, pizza base, cakes, for making all fermented items. This process is being used, this fermentation is being used. Then second is muscle cell. In our muscle cells, when there is lack of oxygen, like we have done too much of hard work, like we ran for say about 2 kilometers. We ran for a marathon, though it is for 6.5 to 7 kilometers. But say for in this lockdown period, we have sat in our homes continuously, there was no movement, so we have gained weight. Now we want to lose weight, we want to become more active. So for that we started running for, say for 2 kilometers we ran on the very first day. Then after 2 kilometers running, what will happen? We'll get tired. Our legs would feel like it has no energy, we cannot run anymore, there will be pain in our legs. So what will happen? We'll rest for some time. Okay, and when we rest for some time, we'll feel relieved, and then we'll be in a position to run again, run back to our home. So now what has happened? Why our legs have got tired? It has fatigue, because our legs has got tired because whatever the oxygen was present in our muscle cells, it has been all used up in running. Now our muscle cells are in short of oxygen, and in absence of oxygen, anaerobic respiration occurs. Up till there was sufficient amount of oxygen in our muscle cells, aerobic respiration was going on. But as soon as all of the oxygen in the muscle cells is being used up for running purpose, there is now lack of oxygen, and in that condition anaerobic respiration takes place, and at that time this glucose present in our body will convert into pyruvic acid, of course. This pyruvic acid will then convert into lactic acid, and that is in our muscle cells. And due to the deposition of lactic acid in absence of oxygen, what will happen? Pyruvic acid will get converted into, okay, before that let me tell you, in presence of oxygen, pyruvic acid will get converted into carbon dioxide and water. After it is converting into carbon dioxide and water, we can run, there will be no pain in our legs. But the moment all the oxygen is being used up, the anaerobic respiration will start, and that time pyruvic acid will start converting into lactic acid. See this, I told this was a 3-carbon compound, this is again a lactic acid is again a 3-carbon compound. So due to deposition of lactic acid in our muscle cells, we'll feel pain in our legs. Then if we'll sit for some time, then the lactic acid will get dissolved slowly, lactic acid will get dissolved, and our oxygen will again reach our muscle cells, and then our legs will feel energetic, will be again in a position to run back to our homes again. So remember, in absence of oxygen, these two reactions takes place. First of all, glucose undergoes glycolysis process in the cytoplasma, and this is glycolysis is an anaerobic respiration. Through glycolysis, glucose converts into pyruvic acid. Then this pyruvic acid converts into two things. In presence of yeast, it undergoes fermentation and converts into ethanol with the release of carbon dioxide and releases 2 ATP. And if it is in the muscle cells, pyruvic acid will form lactic acid along with the release of 2 ATP, 2 molecules of ATP. So this is what is all about anaerobic respiration. So in our body, in our body, or you can say in plants body. Basically we are studying respiration in plants. So in plants body what happens is that first step in respiration is glycolysis, which is an anaerobic process. It occurs in absence of oxygen and it occurs in cytoplasm. Then the product of glycolysis is pyruvic acid. This pyruvic acid will enter the next step, that is Krebs cycle, and this Krebs cycle takes place in mitochondria. Then next step is electron transport chain, which is in short called as ETC also. It takes place in inner membrane of mitochondria only. If you know that mitochondria has two parts, that is two membranes, outer membrane as well as outer membrane which is very porous and inner membrane which is highly folded. So inner membrane of mitochondria, and in the inner membrane of mitochondria electron transport chain will take place. And then the last step is oxidative phosphorylation, which occurs again in the inner membrane of mitochondria only. In the inner membrane of mitochondria there are certain particles which are known as F0, F1 particles. So this oxidative phosphorylation takes place in these F0, F1 particles. And remember, this B, C, D and D, that is Krebs cycle, ETC and oxidative phosphorylation are all aerobic respiration, means it requires oxygen, whereas glycolysis is an anaerobic respiration, means there is no involvement of oxygen in glycolysis. So these four cycles we'll be studying one by one. So in the beginning, the very first we'll be studying is glycolysis. So where does it take place? In cytoplasm. It is an anaerobic process which occurs in absence of oxygen. And then glycolysis, another name for glycolysis is EMP pathway. Like our this dark reaction has one more name, that is C3 cycle. Then light reaction has one more name, that is photophosphorylation. In the same manner, this glycolysis has also one more name, that is EMP pathway. And this EMP pathway is given on the name of the scientists who have discovered this process of glycolysis. So you have studied this process of glycolysis and told us about what is glycolysis. So EMP pathway, this EMP this name is given on the name of the three scientists. E stands for Emden, M stands for Meyerhoff and P stands for Parmes. So these three scientists all together, Emden, Meyerhoff and Parmes, together studied this glycolysis and gave us the concept of glycolysis as to what happens in this glycolysis process. So on the name of these three scientists, this process is named EMP pathway also. Remember, another name for glycolysis is EMP pathway.